Today, we will be discussing money supply. Earlier, we have defined what money is. We have looked at the historical evolution of money, the functions of money, and the forms of money. Now, let us come to a very important portion of our chapter money, and that is the supply of money. Now, what is the supply of money? Money supply refers to total volume or stock of money held by public at a particular point of time. At a particular point of time, and hence, by virtue of this definition, we already know that money is a stock concept. Since it is a measure at a particular time period, alright, we will consider money supply to be a stock concept. Okay? This is, I repeat again, it refers to the total volume or the stock of money held by public at a particular point of time in an economy. Alright. So, by looking at this definition, we have a fair enough idea that it is going to be that volume or that stock of money which will be available with public. And what does that mean? That means it is noteworthy that the money, alright, which is going to be held, or the stock of money which are going to be held by the government, alright, first and foremost will be stock of money held by the government, and also those stock of money held by the banking system. Alright, in an economy, these two stocks of money are not going to be part of money supply. Alright, these are not going to be part of money supply in an economy. Why is that? Because these are money or the stock of money with the supplier, or we can also call them as the producers of money in the economy. And who are these? These are namely the government and the banks. Bank, both the central bank of the country and also the commercial banks. Okay, we all know that the central bank, okay, each and every economy in the world, they have their respective central banks. Okay, and the central bank in India is Reserve Bank of India. Alright, and this Reserve Bank of India is responsible for issuing of notes and currencies. Not currencies, currency, okay? And on the other hand, government of India, the government of the country, government of India is also responsible for issuing of coins and 1 rupee note. Okay, so these are the two issuing authority in India. Okay, and the notes, the currency, alright, you will see that those are signed. You have your governor of RBI signing their notes there. Okay, and also there's a issue of coins and 1 rupee note. You will see the Ministry of Finance, okay, is responsible for the Ministry of Finance under the government of India. Alright, you will find that these notes, 1 rupee note, are signed by the Secretary of the Finance. Alright, and about the commercial banks, okay, commercial banks, we will go in detail what are the commercial banks and central banks and what are the differences between these banks. Alright, but for the time being, just note that commercial banks, we have your private commercial banks, the public commercial banks, okay, the likes of ICICI Bank, which is one of the most famous banks we have in India. It is a private entity. Right, your State Bank of India and its associates. All right, this will be your public sector banks. Okay, so what does this commercial banks do? Commercial banks will they are responsible for the creation of demand deposits. All right, demand deposits, we will come to that. Okay, but let's know for the time being that the money which is held by the public alone, all right, the money which is available to them will be called the supply of money. Anything which is held by the producers, it is the government and the banking sector, those are never to be regarded as the supply of money. Okay, that being clear, let us move to our next now let us see how this supply of money is measured. We have different measures. All right, measures of money supply. Now we have 4 alternative measures of money supply. 4 alternative measures are there available. All right, in order to these measures, okay, these measures of money supply will give you an exact idea and figure out how the money is being circulated. It is being what to say, available in the economy. All right, first and foremost, what you will see here is your M1. Okay, M1 is the first measure of money supply we have, and this M1 is the what is it? It is the currency and coins with public. We will write down it and the components of this M1, which is currency and coins with public. All right, along with the demand deposits of commercial banks. Now, the demand deposits of commercial banks. Okay, and another component, other deposits. other deposits with RBI. Alright, these three components will make up your first monetary measure, which is your M1. Now, currency and coins with public, we all know it is basically the money which is available with us in our pocket. In our day-to-day dealings, we have our currency, paper currency, and coins with us so that we can transact. All right. Now, demand deposits with commercial bank. Now, demand deposits are those deposits which we hold with the commercial banks in the form of what? These are your savings bank account. All right, savings, as well as your current account which you hold with your commercial banks. Now, this savings and the commercial banks, savings account with the commercial banks, also the current account, you can place demand as and when you require a cash. You place the demand to the commercial banks, and the commercial banks are uh, supposed to give you. They have to give you. Okay, commercial banks have to give you money as and when you demand, and that is the reason why we give the name demand deposit. All right, demand deposit for this particular account. You can encash whenever you require. Okay, by just giving in instruments like checks. From the checks, you can convert the money which is there in your savings or the current account into physical money or cash. Okay, so that is the meaning of demand deposits of commercial banks. Now, other deposits with the RBI will include, all right, what are those? First, let us see. These other deposits with RBI are, number one will be your demand deposits. Okay, demand deposits with RBI of public financial institutions. These public financial institutions will be your what? Like NABARD. The full form of NABARD is National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. Also, the regional rural banks do you have? Okay, so these financial institutions will have demand deposits with RBI. Okay, so these are basically the other deposits with RBI we are talking about. The second will be your demand deposits with RBI. Okay, I'll write DD for demand deposit. Okay, demand deposits with RBI of foreign central banks and foreign governments. Okay, now these foreign governments and the foreign central banks also hold their demand draft, the demand deposit with RBI. Okay, which could be, all right, this demand deposit with foreign central bank we are talking about. The foreign central bank, for example, will be your in England you have Bank of England. This is for UK, all right, and in the United States we call it Federal Reserve, isn't it? Federal Reserves. Okay, Bank of Spain, etc., etc. So these institutions will also hold a demand deposit with RBI, and those are part of other deposits. Lastly, we have demand deposits of international financial institutions. International financial institutions. Okay, like the IMF, like your World Bank. Okay, So we have the currency and coins with public, and the demand deposits of commercial banks, all right, and also the other deposits with RBI, and this forms the M1 measure of the money supply. And one more thing I would like to add here. This demand deposits that we are talking about here will be the net demand deposit. Net demand deposits are to be taken into consideration only. What are these net demand deposits? The demand deposits sorry about that. This net demand deposit is what? Gross demand deposit will be inclusive of the interbank claims. We know that banks like this ICICI and the SBI or the many commercial banks are operating in our economy. So these banks have claims and counter claims among themselves. Okay, like one bank opening demand deposits with another bank and vice versa and so. Now, when all these interbank claims as we call it, when these are excluded, right? When these are excluded, that means no exchanges between the banks happening. We call those demand deposit as the net demand deposits. And when we talk about demand deposits of the commercial banks here, we mean the net demand deposits and not the gross one. Okay, the gross demand deposits should not be taken up. So this is the first measure, M1. All right. Now, the second measure will be your M2. Second measure is your M2. All right. M2 is actually M1. The components which are there in the M1 will be included, but what to say, in this M1, the savings deposit with post office savings bank, right? Savings deposits. Post office savings bank. Now, this is more or less similar with that of the measures that we saw in M1. The only addition to this will be your savings deposit with the post office savings. Now, we all know what post office is. Okay, so in this post office, people could open their savings account for the purpose of saving money. All right, so in this M2, this will be added. Savings deposit with the post office savings bank will be the addition along with the M1, and this M1 and M2, they are known as narrow money. Okay, because the money is easily encashable. The money, the monetary components that we see in M1 and M2, they could be encashed easily by placing a demand, all right, or by just placing a claim to it. We can easily convert this money as and when we require. Now, moving on, the third monetary measure will be your M3. M3 is what? Your alright, we are not taking M2 here, but we are taking M1, which is the first measure. Okay, currency and coin plus demand deposit and the other deposit. We will take that M1, and on that we will be adding what? Net time deposits. Net time deposits with banks. Net time deposits with banks. Now, what does that mean? These time deposits are what? These time deposits are those kind of deposits which are uh, your fixed deposit. In fixed deposit, what do we see normally? That these deposits are made in our banks, and we have to wait for a certain term. Certain term we have to wait for its maturity. Right? It is up. And it is only when this is matured we can encash. Means we can convert it into money. All right. And before that, uh, it is not as liquid. We cannot convert it into physical money or cash as we saw earlier in M1 and M2. We have to wait for a certain period of time until the fixed deposit or the term deposit gets matured. All right. But having said that, uh, it has certain degree or certain value of moneyness. All right. These time deposits are also a form of money. Why we are saying this? Because although we have to wait for a short period of time or long period of time depending on the duration of the term. All right. It may be 1 year or 2 years. Sorry, 2 years. Okay, depending on the term. But after this, it gets converted into money. Now, that is what we know from the concept of time deposits or term deposits with a bank, right? Now, in this context, I would like to say something about liquidity. All right, liquidity is a concept. When we study money, liquidity means an asset or a property which is something of value, all right, which could be converted into cash. All right, if some asset is getting converted into cash, then we will say that it is a liquid asset. It is a liquid asset. Okay, and if the same asset cannot be converted easily into money, like for example your national savings certificate, like your bonds, etc. All right, then those will be called as less liquid or not liquid. Okay, so that is the concept of liquidity here. Now let us move to the last measure here, which will be your M4. M4 is what? M4 is your M3. Alright, M3 is M1 plus net time deposits with banks. M4 is M3 plus total deposits with post office savings bank. Total savings. Sorry, total deposits with post office savings bank. All right, post office have open savings bank for you, that is called post office savings bank. But one exception is here, and that exception is we have to exclude your national savings certificate. All right, this is what national savings certificate. This will not be included in your M4. Now, when you look at M1 and M2, they are easily convertible into money, and that is why we will call them narrow money. All right, they are basically the bank money. Bank money is actually the money, the demand deposit that is there with the commercial banks, which we could easily claim and encash when we need. But the measures M3 and M4, all right, they are known as M3 and M4 will be called as broad money. M3 and M4 are called broad money because other than narrow money, all right, because of time deposits or the term deposits, okay? Being added to the narrow money. In narrow money, what you could see is that as and when you require, the money is liquid. The liquidity level is very high. No time deposit, etc., is being involved in there. But in the M3 and M4, you could see that time deposits, term deposits are coming in, and this is for that reason they will be called as broad money, because it has a broader concept. It is the narrow money plus the net time deposits with the bank, and also the total deposits that we have in the post office savings bank, excluding the national savings certificate, of course. Okay. One thing I would like to tell you here is that the monetary measure M3, right, it is called aggregate monetary resources of the country. Okay, and it is widely recognized in the economy. When we talk about money supply, we are not just talking about M1 or M2, all right? But the money supply in our economy has a broader concept. It is a broad money, all right? And M3 very successfully explains that money supply in our economy. We call that aggregate monetary resources. Okay, so we have understood about the measures of money supply, right? What money supply is, it refers to the total volume or the stock of money held by the public at a particular point of time, and those money held are further explained to you in terms of M1, which has component of currency, coins with the public, demand deposits of commercial banks and other deposits, all right? And also M2, which is M1 plus the savings deposits with the post office savings bank, all right? M3 will be your aggregate monetary resources of the country, which is more practical, all right? And it is more meaningful. Means it is a broader money. It's a broad money which is used as aggregate monetary resource in our country. It has M1 plus the net time deposits with the bank, alright. M4 lastly is what? Your M3 plus the total deposits with post office savings bank. Okay, thank you very much.